Okay, it says I'm live. So, if you're watching this on the replay, welcome. If you show up, I'm glad to have you here. And today we're just going to have a conversation. I'm starting a new segment on my channel where I'm actually going to talk about according to psychology. So basically, we're just breaking down some headlines that you often see. They just throw up everywhere. And today we're going to talk about 7 signs someone is only pretending to be a good person, according to psychology. This was a pretty interesting headline, and so much so that I decided I wanted to do a live. And if anybody comes in and we can talk about it. So the thing is, I I'll start out by saying this. When I was younger and even now, I inherently have a belief that everyone is inherently good. So that might be, according to this headline, that might be a little naive, but I mean, I don't know. Life seems to be easier when you believe in the fact that you believe the goodness in all people. But according to this headline, there are going to be times when perhaps we run across people who seem to be good people on the surface, but perhaps they aren't actually good people. And it's really hard for us to figure out exactly what's going on. So, knowing who's genuine and who's just putting on an act may be a skill that we need to know. um, and psychology, according to this headline, is going to shed light on this predicament. So, how we'll be able to tell if someone is actually a good person or not. So, this should be really interesting. And if you've ever wondered if a person is genuinely good or if they're pretending, you're in the right place because we're going to explore this headline. We're going to look at these 7 telltale signs that someone might not be a good person. And before we get into it, I want you to keep in mind that no one is perfect. We all have off days, but if patterns persist, according to this headline, it might be time to reassess our perceptions of the people around us. So, I want you to sit back, grab something to drink, and if you're watching this on the replay, that is okay. And I want you to just take this insights that I'm going to share with you because it might change your view on how you navigate your relationships. Okay. So let's just get started. But before I get into the 7 things, I just want to tell you that self improvement, we talk a lot about self improvement on this channel, and it's really just about bettering ourselves, but it's also about being able to understand ourselves and maybe understand others a little bit better. And so this segment isn't about just focusing on the headlines that you see out there, like this headline for example, but really it's about looking at the other side too, because sometimes just throwing those headlines out there actually may not be a good thing to do. Even if psychology is saying, yes, there are 7 signs that saying that people aren't, necessarily who they say they are, it's important that you do your due diligence and look a little bit deeper into what they're actually saying. So let's just start with the first sign, according to psychology and according to this headline, that maybe people aren't who they say they are, is the first thing is they're always center stage. Well, what does that mean? So we all probably know a person who is always center stage, right? The one who always manages to maybe turn the conversation back to themselves no matter what the topic is. So they're always the hero, or they're the victim, or they're the most knowledgeable in their stories. And psychology is calling this type of person or this type of behavior a form of narcissism. And so, and I don't want you to get me wrong, like it's human nature to want to share our experiences, right? And but according to this headline, there is a fine line between sharing and making everything about yourself. So if you know someone or you happen to be that someone who's consistently stealing the spotlight, it might be a sign that this person or you may not be as good hearted as maybe you think you are, or as this person may think they are. Because according to this headline, genuine people will listen, they will empathize with you, and they don't just wait for their turn to talk, right? Now, next time you're in a conversation with them, a person like this, you should pay attention. You should be asking yourself, are they genuinely interested in what you're saying? Or are they just biding their time until they can steer the conversations back to themselves? Okay, that's what the article in the headline said about the first sign. Now I want to flip the coin for you, and I want to present something else in defense of the other side. So, or I'll say in defense of the spotlight seekers, okay? Sometimes we need to understand the drive behind why people are dominating conversation, because it's easy to label those individuals who turn the conversation back to themselves, or we're saying, well, you know what, these are narcissistic people. It's important to explore deeper psychological reasons maybe behind this behavior. So in other words, I'm saying maybe they're not narcissistic, maybe they are still actually a good person, because it could be that these people who frequently want to take the center stage might actually be seeking some sort of connection, some sort of affirmation from those around them. So they use this center stage, or their storytelling may be a way of them actually engaging with the world. So they're driven by a desire to be accepted. And so maybe it's not just narcissistic behavior. And another thing, often these type of people may be expressing passion. So maybe they're feeling a lot of passion about whatever topic. So, or just passionate in general. So they're turning the conversations back to themselves, but they're doing it out of genuine enthusiasm and passion for the topics that they're discussing. So their intent isn't to overshadow people, but to share something that they find really valuable. Now, how do you cope with insecurity if you're that person, right? If you're actually insecure, this is a way that you may be coping with insecurity, by dominating conversations. I know that seems like, what? I don't understand that. Well, it could be a behavior where a person who is dominating a conversation, it's a coping mechanism for some hidden insecurity, and they're projecting confidence, and it looks like they're really confident, and it looks like they're an expertise in what they're talking about, but it may be that they're trying to counteract those feelings that they're feeling of inadequacy, or maybe they're feeling vulnerable. Okay. And also, sometimes people aren't aware that they are actually monopolizing, taking over the conversation. And so they're not doing it deliberately, but they're doing it because it's some sort of habit that they've formed over time. And it also could be their personality trait. It could be an environmental influence where, it could have been growing up. This behavior could have been something that was reinforced, right? So, what I mean is, if you do something, for example, let me give you an example. Ah, I could use right now as an example. I'm on this live by myself. No one has shown up, but that's okay. But let's say that I every time I did a live, no one showed up. It would probably reinforce a behavior that I wouldn't do a live, right? Or a comedian who, when they did a set, no one laughed. So it's going to reinforce maybe not telling that specific joke, or maybe finding another career, depending on how many times you do a set and no one thinks it's funny. So imagine, so the point is if someone is doing this type of behavior and they're getting reinforced for it, it means they're going to do it again. So basically they have a lack of awareness, and so they're not doing it deliberate, but it's been a habit that's been formed over time due to those environmental influences. Of course, it could be a personality trait, as well. And in a lot of cases, it could be that someone has a particular leadership style. So taking the lead in a conversation is just this natural way to express it. And so these people might actually excel in roles where they need to direct conversations and discussions, and it can make and they're used to making, decisions in these types of spaces, and so they would benefit in those spaces and those group dynamics with other people who actually enjoy, people coming in and kind of dominating and making those decisions. So what I'm trying to say is that we need to look at both sides of the coin, and I'm going to do this is going to be what I'm going to do as I go through these 7 traits. I'm going to give you different perspectives to consider so that you can better understand the motivations behind why some people appear um, to always be in the spotlight, or why these traits, they're saying that it could appear that they're actually not good people when they could be good people. And so this is what we're doing. And this is part of the new series that I'm doing on this channel. The second thing, the second sign, sign number two, yeah, sign number two, that someone may not be a good person is their actions don't match their words. Okay. So listen, I think we all know people where their actions don't match their words, right? So, for example, you could have someone who says, "Yep, they're always saying that they're going to help you. They're going to help you out, when you need someone to help you out." But when it comes down to it, they're nowhere to be found. So they're actually not their their words are not matching their actions, okay? And psychology tells us that inconsistency between what you say and what you do in this instance is a sign of a person that is pretending to actually be a decent person, because basically it's easy to talk to the talk, but they can't walk the walk according to this article. And that's where, whenever there's a mismatch, then their true character shines through. So if you find yourself dealing with someone who often will make all these promises to you, but they never deliver to you, or they're always changing things, you might want to reconsider their intentions according to psychology, because they're saying, hey, you need to question, is the fact that they're putting on, being a nice person, is it just a facade, or are they genuinely trying but falling short? Because you need to remember that a kind person isn't a person that's just saying the right things, right? They also have actions behind it. But let's take a look at the other side of the coin, because basically psychology is saying, if someone says, I'm going to do this, but they don't do this, then you need to question that. Okay. So, how do we unpack then the gap between promises and actions? Because a compassionate look at human imperfections, I think, is needed in this one. Hold on a second. Okay, hold on. Okay, I need to turn this off. Okay. All right. Okay. So, it's common for us to encounter people whose actions don't always align with their words. So, we don't want to quickly judge them, right? As they're just deceitful people. We want to consider some alternative explanations that might humanize their behavior. So basically, we want to understand that sometimes people genuinely believe in their ability to fulfill promises. So a lot of times people will say, "Yeah, I can do this," but then something genuinely comes up and, they cannot commit, they cannot fulfill the promise. So there's an overconfidence in their ability and in their capacity, and it may lead them to commit to more than they can handle. And it's not due to malice, but due to an honest misjudgment of their own resources and time. Now, another thing is, have you ever met someone who just really wants to please people, a people pleaser? I think I genuinely have. I like to please people. I like it when people are happy. And I used to overcommit. It was a big problem. I had to learn to set boundaries. But a lot of people will make promises because they have a strong desire to please others, okay? And it can be seen as, they're reliable, they're helpful, they want to please others, and their intentions are good, but the practicality of them being able to do it and deliver, not so good, because most likely this individual is overcommitting, and they have unforeseen circumstances and competing priorities, and they're not able to do what they said they were going to do. Another phenomenon that happens is what we call, in the psychological world, optimism bias. Well, what is that? This is a psychological phenomenon that leads people to believe that they are less likely to experience negative outcomes. So when someone says, "I've got your back," they might genuinely feel optimistic about being able to help, not really considering the realistic possibility of failure. So, in other words, they genuinely meant that. I got you, but something happened, right? And also, some people just aren't, they just don't fully understand their own limitations. I know that's hard, but we've talked about that before on this channel. Boundaries. Some people just don't understand it, and they're just not aware of how they're just constantly saying yes, 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 to everything, and they're over promising, and it impacts relationships. So stress is huge, huge right now, and there are a lot of external environmental factors going on in everybody's world. So this is impacting. I think it's just more so right now where it's really impacting people, and they're just overcommitting. So what might seem like inconsistency could actually just be the result of external factors that derail their initial intentions. Another thing is, sometimes recognizing a pattern of unmet promises is a critical learning moment for someone. And this realization might lead them to more self awareness and better planning for the future. So they're just not, what I'm saying is they're not really deceitful people. It's just that they need to recognize that maybe they're overcommitting. So, in other words, maybe we need to adopt a more empathetic view of someone who might be failing to match their actions with their words. And then that way we can foster a more understanding and supportive environment, which would just encourage people to be open and honest with each other and understand their own capabilities. That's not to say that you want to continue to allow someone to do this. It's just recognizing that sometimes this may be the situation. So we just don't automatically assume the worst in someone. Number three, sign number three that someone may not be the good person that they say they are is they're quick to point out the fault in others. So, do you know someone, or are you that person who's always talking about people? Always pointing out fault in people. So, psychology tells us that people who frequently criticize others often do it because they want to divert attention from their own shortcomings. So, it's a classic deflection technique, and it should be a red flag. If someone is always like hey, so and so, whatever, whatever, pointing out the flaw in others before they're acknowledging their own imperfections, it might be a sign that they're pretending to be a good person. Listen, nobody's perfect, but we all have faults and weaknesses or strengths, that we can make stronger. But if we don't acknowledge and accept them, then according to psychology, we're not being genuinely good. But if we acknowledge and we accept them, then we're being genuinely good. Because also, we don't want to air other people's dirty laundry over coffee to someone else, right? And also, we need to understand why some people are quick to judge others. Why are people quick to do that? And you know what? It's been happening a lot lately. I don't know here. I don't know if it's because, well, we don't need to talk about it, but there's a lot going on. So people seem angry. But when you encounter someone, or if you look at yourself and realize that you're this person who's always pointing out the fault in others, it's kind of off putting. But if you explore the reasons behind the behavior, then it might allow you to be more compassionate with yourself or compassionate with others. One of the things I want to talk to you about is social conditioning. Um, in some cases, people who frequently criticize others have actually been conditioned. I brought this up in, I think, tip one or sign one. Um, in some cases, people who frequently criticize others have been conditioned by their environments or whatever upbringings to focus on flaws as some sort of form of social interaction. Or you could think of it as a way to connect with others, but it's doing it in a not so positive way. So that is something that you need to consider as well. Yes, that definitely there needs to be some changes in behavior. Okay, definitely. Another thing is unconscious mirroring. Well, let me explain. Sometimes people criticize aspects in others that they are subconsciously uncomfortable with in themselves. So, this mirroring can be an unconscious attempt for that person to externalize so they don't have to deal with their own insecurities and the things that bother them about themselves. So, criticizing others might stem then from or a lack of more constructive communication skills. So, we need to be careful it, trying to label that. We definitely don't want to do that because some people just don't know how to express themselves. They don't know how to express disagreement or concern in a positive or supportive manner. And I think, man, I think that just nails it on the head, to be honest with you, because I think a lot of what I've been discovering lately is that people really, if you disagree with somebody, they take it as a sign of battle. Like you've just drew a line in the sand, and that may not be what it is, okay? Um, some people also who do a lot of criticizing of others, hold themselves to incredibly high standards. Thus, they hold others to incredibly high standards, and their criticisms are just a reflection of their personal aspirations towards this idea of perfection, and they have a really critical nature. And it usually stems from a place of wanting to see everyone, just everyone, be at and achieve their best. But unfortunately, it's expressed in a less than ideal manner. In certain contexts, also, what appears to be criticism could be an attempt to just hold, provide really honest feedback to someone. But there's a problem with that because usually the person didn't ask for your feedback, and the intention might not it comes out like more as belittling a person. You're not really informing a person, and it's not expressed usually with the necessary tact that's necessary. And there's a biggie. There's another biggie here. um, you need to be aware of cultural differences. So if you're dealing with a different culture, because in some cultures, direct criticism is common and it's definitely not meant to be hurtful. It's just a straightforward way of communication, and it could be misunderstood by someone who doesn't share the same culture. So if you just understand these underlying reasons, it can help us respond more effectively, because it's not just about the person, it's about how we're responding. So we can be able to respond differently to when we run across people who are constantly criticizing others. But we definitely want to try to guide them towards more positive and supportive ways of interactions. And sometimes we just got to be straightforward and say, yeah, that's not what we're doing here, right? The fourth sign that someone may not be who they say they are is they're always the victim. Do you know someone like that? Or have you ever met someone who's always the victim? They're always perpetually at the end of life's unfairness. They may say things like, I can't believe this happened to me. Why does this happen to me? It's a pattern. It's a pattern that they've constructed when they're always the innocent victim. It is a phenomena, psychologically speaking, known as victim mentality. I don't know if you've ever heard that before, but it is. People who adopt this mindset believe that they have absolutely no control over their lives, and they're constantly, you know, being wronged by others. And everyone has unfortunate experiences. We all do. But a perpetual victim view is a sign that a person may be pretending to be good. Okay. According to psychology. So, you know what? They're using their victimhood because they want sympathy, they want to manipulate others' perceptions of them. Genuine people don't play the victim card. They take responsibility for their actions and they learn from their mistakes. Now, remember, I'm giving you the headline. These aren't necessarily my opinions. And then I'm giving you the opposite side of the coin. But we got to go here first. So if you find someone who's always stuck in the poor me narrative, it might be time to rethink their authenticity. Or is it because now it's time to give you the opposite side of the coin? This is the danger of these headlines sometimes. This is also the danger of taking these really complex human behaviors and trying to simplify them. Okay. So the opposite side of that is when we explore the roots of victim mentality, we actually can find a sympathetic. Hey, Majoy. Thank you for showing up. You didn't have to. I know you were doing your live over there. And I love that live. And I hate to say it, but I'm going to need more of that. That was absolutely wonderful. It was like I was walking with you, a friend walking with a friend. That was really nice. I appreciated that. So I'm demanding more. but anyway, we can talk about that. I'm glad you showed up. We're talking about breaking down. It's a new series. Just to quickly fill you in, it's a new series that I'm doing on my channel, where I'm breaking down some. Okay, perfect. So it's a new theory where, or a new series where I'm breaking down headlines that can be unfortunate, and it can lead someone down a really bad path. And the headline we're breaking down today is Seven Signs Someone is Only Pretending to Be a Good Person. Now, this is according to psychology. And a lot of times these people read the headlines and they start making all these decisions in their life. So I'm giving you the headline and I'm giving you the opposite side of the coin as well. So you can have a more rounded view of what you're looking at. And I thought today's topic would be really good. At least here where I live, it's been a lot going on and people are quick now. There's a lot of high emotions. So that's what we're discussing today. And we're actually looking at the opposite side of the coin of the fourth sign that the headline gained, where if you know someone in your life who may always be a victim, Okay. And if you want to type your own experience or contribute, please do in the comments, because it's all about experience and your own perception. But if we flip that around and we think about someone who is always, the victim, who is often perceived negatively because they adopt this victim mentality, they might just be misunderstood. So, if we could understand the psychological and emotional layers of someone who exhibits this behavior, perhaps within ourselves, we can find some empathy and support for this person. Because for some people, portraying themselves as victims, and I know we've probably all known someone like that, but portraying themselves as victims can be an unconscious way in which they're coping with something. And they've just developed this response as a response to past traumas or some sort of ongoing stress. So in a way, it's kind of like a way for a person to say, notice me. They may need some extra attention. And it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. And really, that leads us into this psychological phenomena that the headline didn't talk about, which is learned helplessness. Learned helplessness is a fascinating phenomena. It's a psychological condition, and it happens when a person has experienced a traumatic event or series of setbacks that leave them feeling extremely powerless. Okay. They've done tons of study on these fascinating studies, but as a result, they actually might genuinely perceive themselves as being unable to influence. They have no influence. They have no control in their life. So essentially whatever happens to them happens to them. Okay. So this is a real thing and it happens to people sometimes. And so they're seeking connection. And the way that they're seeking connection is with this victim mentality, unfortunately. And it really does turn a lot of people off. But this is what happens sometimes when people suffer from trauma. It's just a plea for empathy rather than a tactic for manipulation. And sometimes people who are stuck in this victim mentality, they may simply just lack skills to effectively address and be able to solve their problem. So they might not be pretending to be victims, but actually are. You know what I mean? So it can be a real daunting task to try to tease that apart. And I certainly understand that. But for some, slipping into this victimhood is subconsciously serving as a defense mechanism because they've been so hurt, they've been so traumatized, and they want to avoid any anxiety that's associated with further potential blame. A lot of people who have suffered trauma blame themselves. There's a lot of data out there that really supports that. And if you've had that experience, you can certainly understand that. So, recognizing someone's victim mentality can be the first step in being able to possibly help them realize their own potential, um, certainly have empathy, acknowledge, and that sometimes it just takes a friend to acknowledge their feelings, to say, you know what, I hear you, I see you, let's talk, right? And the last flip side of the coin of this particular sign, I want to say, is there could be some cultural and social factors. We always cannot discount that, because in some cultures or environments, being the victim might be the only way that this person feels like their voice is heard. And so in this type of context, it does foster victim mentality, unfortunately, and it's a survival strategy. It is definitely a survival strategy within a specific social or familiar hierarchy. Some cultures are just like that. So, if we can understand these deeper reasons, then we can approach this differently. We don't need to always assume that, this person is not a good person. So, this is the opposite side of the coin. And if you're just joining me or watching this on the replay, thank you. I appreciate it. You're certainly welcome to comment, join in the conversation. We are looking at 7 signs someone is only pretending to be a good person, and we're on number 5, according to psychology. And then I'm giving you the opposite side because this can be a little bit dicey because they take these really complex behaviors and just throw it out there. And you certainly don't, you wouldn't want to miss out on a good relationships by doing that. Let's get it right on into sign number 5. They have a lack of empathy. Well, what is empathy? First of all, if you don't know what empathy is, because there's a difference between sympathy and empathy, let's define empathy for you. It's just the ability to understand and share feelings of others. And it's a very key component of human behavior. But did you know that empathy is not a given in everyone? Some people actually struggle with it, particularly those people, according to this headline, who are trying to be pretending to be a good person. So they may be feigning concern or sympathy, but actually they're not feeling anything. Their emotions are hollow or they're forced. And you probably met people like this. I know I have. Unfortunately, it's a really weird space. And psychology actually has a term for this called cognitive empathy. Okay. This is when someone understands what you're going through on an intellectual level, but they can't really feel the emotion. So if you know that anyone or you notice someone who seems to lack authentic empathy, someone who can't genuinely rejoice, be happy for you or offer comfort to you when you're going through something, it could be a sign they're not as good natured as they appear, according to this headline. Now, after all, a good person isn't just there for like photo ops, right? They're going to be there for your highs, your lows, your in between. Now I want to unpack that for you and I want to flip that coin over and talk a little bit about that. And I'm telling you that's all the headline gave you. And if that's all you had to go through and you were using that criterion, it's lacking. So let's flip that coin. We need to understand those who seem to lack it. Just bear with me because empathy is often just put out there, heralded as this essential human trait, yet not everyone is equipped with the same capacity for emotional empathy. And here's a closer look. I'm going to give you a closer look at why some people might appear to lack empathy and how this does not necessarily reflect their moral character. And the first thing I'm going to tell you about is neurological differences because for some, the challenge in, showing empathy could be the fact that they have a neurological difference. So this would be conditions such as autism spectrum disorder and you cannot always recognize that in people. You cannot always you think you can, but you can't. And that's a whole nother series. But they could also have a personality disorder. And that could be affecting how they're processing their emotions, how they're able to empathize with you. So it looks really cold to you, but this is all they can do from a physical space. And so their emotional responses seem less typical, especially if you're judging them with someone that's neurotypical. Also, emotional overwhelm. There are people that might suppress their empathetic responses because of trauma or emotional overwhelm. So they're protecting themselves from feeling too deeply. And so they have this defense mechanism against their own unresolved pain. So we have to understand that. And again, we get back to this cognitive and effective empathy because some people can, they have good cognitive empathy. They can understand why you're feeling, what you're feeling from an intellectual space, but they're struggling with that effective empathy, which involves being able to emotionally connect with someone. And so this doesn't necessarily mean they don't care. They might just show it differently. And we need to kind of understand that. In this environment in which, you could have upbringing, you could have people that grew up in environments where it was greatly influenced their empathetic development and they just didn't have a lot of emotional expressive modeling happening, so they had a lot of more detached environments and they might not have learned to effectively be able to show empathy. And here is really one I think that a lot of people can really understand that are going through and continue to go through when you have this empathy fatigue. People in really high stress jobs or people who are experiencing stress regularly, very high stress, they require this experience. They're going to end up having a fatigue of empathy because they have become desensitized to emotional cues due to overexposure. Can you imagine? I mean, that makes sense. So their empathy can seem like it's forced or absent when in reality they're just emotionally exhausted. And so we need to be aware of that. So we're having these misinterpretation of signals because sometimes what is perceived as lack of empathy is just actually a misunderstanding. And it could be a misunderstanding because someone is overwhelmed. It could be a misunderstanding because someone is not neurotypical. It could be a misunderstanding because you're just not able to get those cues. And don't forget cultural differences, for example. That can lead to a very wide different expressions of empathy that are not recognized universally. So we need to not forget that. And so that leads us into sign number 7. Oh, are we on 7 or 6? Um, no, we're on 6, where people are dismissive of your feelings. Hmm. I'm gonna tell you, confessional moment. I don't like that. But I remember when I was going through a rough time and I opened up to someone about some struggles that I was having, and I was hoping for a comforting ear. Instead, yeah, yeah. So cultural difference, absolutely. Um, anyway, I opened up to someone about some stuff I was going through, and I was expecting, you expect someone to be empathetic. You know what I got? Uh, why are you complaining? That's not a big deal. You're just overreacting. Um, hurt my feelings, not gonna lie. But psychology, according to this headline, is telling us that I should be wary of a person like that because they are belittling my feelings, they're dismissing, my feelings, and it's a form of emotional invalidation. So that emotional invalidation is an unhealthy behavior where someone will minimize or reject your feelings as just not being important. A genuinely good person, according to psychology, doesn't dismiss your feelings. They actually respect them. And they understand that your emotions are real, they're valid. Um, thank you, Majoy. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Um, so they're recognizing that your emotions are real, your emotions are valid, no matter how different they are from, someone else's. But if you find someone that's consistently brushing off your feelings, it may be a sign that they're just pretending to be a good person and supportive person because everyone's feelings matter. Everyone deserves to be heard, right? Now let's flip that coin because that's that headline and that's all they gave you on that. We need to explore the reasons behind why someone may be dismissing your feelings. So if I would just look at this criterion, I would have tossed this person because I would have been like, you're not a good person. You just totally dismiss me. But I understood on a deeper level when someone dismisses or minimizes, but my feelings were hurt. You still need to acknowledge that. But I did understand that, understanding why some people might react a certain way, it helped me with insights into their behavior. And also I was able to communicate that with the person. So, some of the reasons that people may respond this way, and it may seem like they're dismissing your behavior, is because they haven't developed a really high level of emotional intelligence. And this lack of development is resulting in their difficulty being able to understand and process the emotions that you have, so the emotions of others. And that's leading them to, unfortunately, dismiss feelings they can't relate to. They can't understand it. Okay? So that's one reason why. In a lot of cultures too, I want to talk about how expressing emotions is not encouraged. again, we get back to this cultural thing, which is so important. You need to be aware of who this interaction you're having and be careful how you respond to it, because in some cultures, emotion, if you're emotional, that's not considered a good thing. Emotional restraint is actually valued in some cultures. And when you are interacting with people from different backgrounds, they may not be equipped to handle your expressive emotions comfortably. So I'm saying you're right and they're right all at the same time. And that could lead that person, though, to dismiss your emotions. And if you don't understand this, yeah, your feelings are going to be hurt, and they might be hurt anyway, but still being able to understand their perspective and they understand your perspective, at least you don't lose a potentially good friend or whatever this person is in your relationship. Another thing that I want to talk about is the self-protection mechanisms that happen in someone who may dismiss your feelings, because for some, dismissing others emotions is a defense mechanism. I think this is like a pattern. We've talked about this in a few other of these signs, right? This is huge with people. Very huge. There's a lot of defense mechanisms going on, but in this particular space, they just don't want to become emotionally involved with you, and this can be especially true for those who have experienced a lot of vulnerability, emotionally speaking, and they've had some trauma associated with that, and they're like, no, 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 this is too overwhelming, and it's been damaging to me in the past, and immediately they set up a wall. Okay. Another thing is personal struggles and what are they going through at the moment? Maybe what you just told that person doesn't even compare to what they're going through, right? And so they're looking at you like you've got to be kidding. That's nothing compared to what they may be going through. So people under a lot of stress or dealing with their own issues or finding it difficult to engage with your emotional needs. And so their dismissive behavior might not be intentional, but it's just a result of their own current capacity. They're just overwhelmed. They don't have any room on their plate for anything else. Sometimes it can be misunderstanding the severity of what's going on. So a person may not understand that this is deep for you. Okay. And so they're judging it differently. And so they're responding inappropriately. Education on emotional expression and responses, I believe, can bridge the gap. Okay. So if you have someone who has previously been manipulated by emotional expression, they might develop a tendency to dismiss emotions quickly to protect themselves from potential deceit. So that's another thing. Communication styles. I really, really, really want to tell you that different communication styles can lead to misunderstandings. I think that leads back to cultural. It's just how do we communicate? So, what could simply be a matter of differing expressions or understandings of emotional support can be, something else for somebody. And I want to tell you a personal thing. When I was doing my postdoc, I worked in a lab that was ran, everybody in there was from China, and no one spoke any English but me. So I had to take my Google Translator on my phone and just kind of put it close to them so I could understand what was being said in the lab that I was doing my work in. They also taught me a lot of different cultural things that I didn't understand. And I had to learn how to navigate. So, because it was a different culture. Okay. And I thought I did our last sign, but actually we have one more sign. They're only nice when they need something. Whoo, this is a big one. Have you ever noticed someone being particularly nice to you only to realize later that they needed a favor? Okay. According to psychology, if their kindness comes with those strings attached, this transaction doesn't feel genuine. It could be a sign that they're just pretending to be a good person, because genuine goodness should be unconditional. Yeah, communication gaps. Mm. when they only need a favor. Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. Oh, I think that's another one of my pet peeves. But psychology is saying, listen, they may not be a good person because it's conditional, and it doesn't change based on what they get out of you, right? It's consistent, not circumstantial. So if someone's goodness, niceness seems to fluctuate based on their needs, you need to take note of that, because true kindness is not a tool for personal gain, right? It's an inherent trait, and it usually shines through regardless of the situation. I bet you didn't think I could flip the coin on this, but I'm actually going to flip the coin, and I'm going to give you the opposite side. I want to examine some contextual kindness, why some people may seem conditionally nice, because it's often disheartening to feel. I mean, it doesn't feel good to be in that situation where someone, they're just being nice to you because they need something. However, if we could understand a broader context of this behavior, then perhaps it could shed some light on why they're doing this, and it could help us navigate some of those relationships more effectively, because these may be relationships that you can't just dump, right? Not every relationship is like that. In some cases, when people are doing this, they might find themselves really stretched thin, either emotionally or materially. And they may only reach out to others when they're in some sort of dire need, but it doesn't necessarily reflect a lack of genuine kindness. What it does reflect is a limitation in their ability to engage more consistently. So I hope that makes sense. Obviously, every situation is different. Another thing is their social skills and awareness. Some people just may not have developed these social skills and these nuanced social skills that they need to navigate relationships effectively. So they know it. I know it seems, how could they not know? But they may not realize how their behavior appears transactional. They're doing something because they're getting something, they're being nice and they're getting something in return. Or they may not know that how to express genuine kindness without some sort of immediate prompt in their life. And I want to get into cultural and environmental influences. So different cultures and environments will emphasize different aspects of social interaction. And in some settings, um, relationships built off of, you give me this, I give you this, where favors and kindness are exchanged, are seen more highly, right? They may be the norm rather than some sort of indication of insincerity. So that may just be a cultural thing. Also, past experiences. People who have often been in situations where they had to rely on others for support might habitually associate kindness. Thank you, Majoy. I really appreciate that. Okay, we'll catch up soon. Sorry you got drenched. I got to see the pack. Majoy is one of my regulars, and I appreciate her coming. And she was on a live earlier. If you can check out her channel, you should. She was showing you Singapore, and it was absolutely beautiful. So let's get back to past experiences. So individuals who have often been in situations where they had to rely on others for support, they're just going to habitually do that, right? So they're going to be nice and they're going to expect something in return. And their experiences could have just been conditioned. It's just a way that it's survival. It's learned survival behavior. Also, those people who are dealing with personal challenges or have really high levels of stress, they just don't have the emotional bandwidth to be consistently kind. And we have to understand that. Their moments of kindness, although they may seem conditional, might be their attempt to maintain relationships when they're not really capable in the moment of doing it. So we have to find some way. I'm not saying you should allow yourself to be walked on. I'm not saying you should allow yourself to be treated that way. I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying we need to recognize differences in others, and everything may not be so black and white. Okay. Sometimes our interpretations of others' actions can be influenced by our own expectations. And I think that's a great segue for that. We have expectations of people, and they're based on our experiences. So what might seem like conditional kindness could actually be an awkward or misunderstood attempt at connection. Also, in professional or really highly competitive environments, people may adapt by being selectively kind when it aligns with their goals. And this can appear strategic. It might simply be an adaptation to the demands of their environment rather than a reflection of their true character. So, by considering these different reasons, we can approach perceived conditional kindness with a more sort of nuanced perspective, and we can try to be more understanding and potentially guide individuals toward more an unconditional way of interacting. So, hopefully, flipping this coin can give you an idea of how to have healthier and more genuine relationships. um, if you found yourself nodding along as I went through the signs, I just want you to know it's okay. We've all encountered, we've all been in places before where, with people who are just pretending to be good. I think the key that I just wanted you to get from this is awareness. I want you to be able to recognize these behaviors, understand the psychology behind the behaviors, and use the knowledge to just basically maybe reassess your relationships and your interactions with people, and understand that nobody's perfect. We all have our moments of and this is why I'm alone in the live, can't talk. Nobody is perfect. We all have our moments of insincerity, right? Self interest. But it's the consistent patterns, I think, that matter over time, because we just don't want to cast judgment on people. We don't, try not to hold grudges. Not for the other person, but really for ourselves. And we need to be able to understand human behavior better so we can navigate these relationships more mindfully. So I'm asking you, or am I asking myself as well? This is when you get to see my true personality shine, because there's no one in here. So I'm speaking to myself. Listen, it's never easy to face the truth, but it's a step forward towards healthier relationships, okay? We're all just trying to self-improve, and we want to be genuinely good to ourselves, not because we want something in return, but because it's who we are at our core. So not only do we be genuinely good to ourselves, but we're good to others as well. Because that old saying, treat others how you want to be treated. Again, um, for some reason, I'm gonna have to cut this out probably, because I'm just sitting here talking to myself pretty much. I've had a few people pop in and out. Y'all, this YouTube thing is not easy, but I'm used to it. As a prior professor, let me tell you what, when we had to go remote, this is totally off topic and I will cut this out, but let me tell you this. When we had to go remote, and I can't say the words why unless I decide to cut don't decide to cut this out. But when we had to go remote, um the thing is that I my students would show up, and we were on Zoom. And I don't know if you're familiar with Zoom, but there's little boxes. And I didn't require them to turn on their camera. Some professors did. I mean, they're who knows why. Not everybody wants to show their surroundings. Anyway, long story short, I could see myself talking, teaching to a bunch of black boxes. Okay. So this should be something I'm used to. I shouldn't have a problem doing this. Yeah. So anyway, I just wanted to share that experience. I'm gonna have to cut that out. I totally went off topic, and if I want to put this on my podcast, that ain't cutting it. So anyway, let's get back to it. Where are we? So okay, as we consider, okay, we're back. I'm summing everything up, y'all. I'm back. I'm back. Um, I'm back. As we consider the alternative perspectives, right, that I gave you on behaviors that initially seemed really disingenuous. So, these people aren't being good people because we're breaking down those seven signs that someone is only pretending to be a good person, or self-serving. I think it's important to remember the importance of empathy, and it's important to understand in all our relationships there's a reflective conclusion that I want to share with you on embracing the more empathetic viewpoint. And let me tell you, if you're listening to this right now, I want to tell you how important it is, especially right now. There's a lot of energy out there, and a lot of people are going through a lot of things. And I know it's hard when you're going through things to be empathetic to others, to be empathetic to yourself. So I just want to say that it's easy to fall into the trap of judging other people based on their actions without understanding the full context of why they're behaving that way. So I'm asking you, I'm not asking anything of you, I'm not trying to do myself, is to just strive to approach each situation with empathy, and it can really lead to a more meaningful connection and less conflict within yourself and within others. So be aware of your own biases. Take time to reflect on how you're perceiving other people and how they're behaving. It can really help you be able to relate to other people more genuinely and maybe even yourself. And consider whether your own interpretations are influenced by your own past experiences or your own preconceived ideas. Acknowledging that no one is perfect, including ourselves, can help us be more forgiving. So, we want to recognize that everyone has moments of weakness or self interest, and it really allows for a more human and compassionate approach, which is difficult, I know, for interpersonal relationships. We want to understand human behavior is an ongoing journey. I think that's probably one of the most important things to understand, that human behavior is an ongoing journey. Every interaction that we have with someone is an opportunity to learn more about ourselves, about others, staying open to learning about difficult life experiences or different life experiences and perspectives is just going to enrich your understanding and appreciation of human complexity. And I'm not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just offering some things that may help you find peace. Using your own insights about human behavior to foster relationships based on mutual respect and understanding is so valuable, because we can learn to navigate our interactions more mindfully, and it could help us grow, and it can help us our overall well-being, and it encourages us to be authentic to ourselves and in our relationships and in our actions and in our words, and we can bring forward, manifest environments where we can express ourselves truly without fear of judgment or rejection. Okay. And we just want to treat others like we want to be treated. And we want to, learn that everybody is different. We're not going to do what the next person does, and maybe contribute more positively to the space around us. So, if you could just reflect on those insights and think about those, you could move forward and maybe make a commitment to being able to understand people and having healthier interactions with others. Don't let other people walk all over you. That is not what I am suggesting at all. Please don't do that. But I think there's a safe space that you can be authentic to yourself and you can be, a pretty decent person. Not perfect, not striving for perfection, but just striving um, to be better than the day before the day behind. So this is me again. Um, Looking at myself, talking to myself. This is another thing I'll have to edit out. Yeah. So I hope that y'all enjoyed the live. So I hope that you enjoyed this information and I hope that you're going to enjoy this segment on the channel where it's called According to Psychology, where I take a headline and I look at that headline and I give you the opposite side of the coin because sometimes those headlines aren't giving you everything that you need to make informed decisions or just really taking complex behaviors and turning them into really simplified approaches to that. So, I've enjoyed this live. If you're watching this live on the replay, I thank you for coming and checking it out. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody in this community. I've gotten a lot of subscribers over the past week or so, and I really appreciate you subscribing to the community. And since I've gotten so many new subscribers, I think it's probably important for me to do either a video or a live where I introduce myself and talk to you about who I am. And I'm actually thinking about doing a panel, inviting a few people from my community and just having a conversation, coffee time, if you will. So, that being said, until we meet again, take care of your mind, body, and soul.